Princess Liara of Zyphera walked along the marble corridors of her palace, her long silver robes trailing behind her. The palace was quiet at this early hour, the twin suns of Zyphera just beginning to rise, casting soft golden and violet hues across the towering walls. She paused for a moment near a large window that looked out over the city. The city was alive with movement, even now ships gliding silently between towers, hovercrafts zooming along aerial highways, and citizens in vibrant attire going about their morning routines. But despite the beauty outside, Lyra's heart was heavy. She had spent months preparing for her upcoming marriage, a union meant to bring peace between her planet and a distant human colony. The human in question, Captain Kale, was known across the galaxy. His name brought respect in some circles, fear in others. And Liara? She had never met him. Rumors filled her mind every day. Stories from traders, diplomats, and spies painted him as ruthless, a man who could command fleets, crush rebellions, and bend entire planets to his will. He had the reputation of someone who would not hesitate to make tough decisions, no matter the cost. To Liara, raised in the serene halls of Zyphera, these tales were terrifying. She imagined a life of fear under his stern gaze, endless arguments, and a cold marriage devoid of affection. Lyra's hand shook slightly as she touched a small, crystalline pendant around her neck, a gift from her late mother. "You are stronger than you think," her mother had said. "But even strength cannot face the unknown without courage." Liara sighed, wishing courage could be summoned like a cup of morning tea. Her attendant, a soft-spoken alien named Vela, entered the corridor quietly. Vela had been with Liara since childhood and knew her moods better than anyone. Princess Vela said gently, bowing. "Are you well this morning?" Liara forced a smile, though it felt brittle. "I am. As well as one can be when marrying a man you have never met." Vela's eyes softened with understanding. "He may not be, as the stories say. Humans, they are different. You will see for yourself soon." Liara shook her head, frustration bubbling beneath her calm exterior. "It is not just the stories, Vela. It is the idea of him. A man from another world, someone who has faced battles and conquered enemies. What do I know of him? What if I cannot connect with him?" Vela stepped closer and placed a comforting hand on Lyra's shoulder. "Princess, you are more than the fears that whisper in your mind. You have ruled wisely. You have learned compassion, diplomacy, and courage. That will not change because he is human. Perhaps he will surprise you." Liara let out a long breath and turned back to the window. The city below shimmered in the morning light. "I hope you are right, Vela," she said softly. For days, she immersed herself in preparations. Advisors discussed customs, ceremonial attire, and diplomatic protocols. Liara listened politely, but her mind wandered constantly to Captain Kale. She imagined him stern, cold, unfeeling. She imagined long silences at dinner, sharp words exchanged, and the fear of not being understood. At night she could not sleep. She would lie in her bed, staring at the twin suns as they disappeared below the horizon, and wonder what kind of man awaited her. Sometimes she pictured a cruel commander, standing in a room filled with stars and machines, looking down at her with eyes that judged and measured her. Other times, she imagined a lonely, weary human, carrying the weight of countless worlds on his shoulders, trying to do what was right but misunderstood by all. Both visions terrified her. Then, one morning, a message arrived from the human colony. It was not a formal invitation or a fleet report. It was a personal message, sent directly to her by Captain Kale. "Princess Liara," the message began, "I am aware of the stories that precede me. I do not ask you to believe them, nor to fear them. I wish only to meet you, to speak as to leaders who care for the future of our people. If my reputation is frightening, let it not blind you to the man behind it." Liara read the words several times, her fingers trembling slightly. There was no arrogance, no threat, only honesty. And yet, the fear remained, nestled deep in her chest like a stone. She took the message to Vela, who read it carefully. "See, he does not seem ruthless at all," Vela said. I know, Lyara admitted. And yet my mind cannot escape the warnings. Perhaps I have been told too many stories about humans. Vila smiled gently. Stories can only teach what people fear. They cannot tell what they might love. Lyara thought about this. Could she love someone she had never met? Could she trust a human with her heart, her future, and the fate of her people? Days passed, and the day of her journey to the human colony approached. She stood on the observation deck of the palace one last time, looking out at the horizon. Ships were gathering in the sky, ready to carry her across the stars. She felt a strange mix of anticipation and dread when she finally stepped aboard the starship that would take her to meet Captain Kale. She could not help but glance at the human fleet in the distance. Sleek ships, painted in the muted colors of the United Earth Coalition, glinted in the sunlight. They were a reminder of the power that humans held across the galaxy, a power that was both inspiring and terrifying. The journey was long, and Lyara spent much of it in reflection. She studied human history, learned about their culture, and even practiced their language. But each fact she learned only deepened the mystery. Humans were capable of great kindness and terrible destruction. They were unpredictable, like wild storms that could bring life or death. One night, as the twin moons of Zyphara rose, casting silvery light across the deck, Lyara allowed herself a rare moment of vulnerability. She whispered into the quiet room, "What if he is nothing like I imagine? What if he is worse?" The thought made her shiver. And yet, beneath the fear, a small spark of curiosity glimmered. Who was Captain Kale, really? Could a human, so different from her own people, be someone she could respect, even admire? By the time the starship entered the human colony, Lyara felt a mixture of fear and excitement. She had traveled across the galaxy, leaving behind everything familiar. Soon she would meet the man who had been described as Ruthless, a man whose reputation could shake worlds. She did not know whether to dread or embrace the encounter. The doors of the ship opened, and a delegation of humans greeted her. Among them stood Captain Kale. Lyra's heart raced. He was not the towering, cold figure she had imagined. Instead, he was calm, with a quiet presence that seemed to command respect without demanding it. His eyes were sharp, but they did not judge harshly. They studied with curiosity and intelligence. Lyara took a step forward, her nerves on edge. She realized as she faced him that the stories she had heard were only shadows of the truth. And perhaps, just perhaps, there was more to this human than she had ever imagined. As the sun of the human colony rose, casting long golden rays across the landing platform, Lyara felt a flicker of hope. Fear still lingered in her chest, but it was no longer the only emotion she carried. Curiosity, and perhaps even the first hints of trust, had begun to bloom. The landing platform of the human colony stretched wide under the rising sun, polished metal gleaming in the light. Princess Lyra's starship had touched down moments ago, and she stepped out with a mixture of excitement and nervousness. Silver robes shimmered softly, catching the early sunlight as she walked down the ramp, accompanied by Vila and a small group of Zipharan attendants. The human delegation awaited them, standing tall and disciplined. But her eyes searched for him, Captain Kale, the man she had spent months imagining as ruthless and unforgiving. And then she saw him. Kale stood slightly apart from the others, his posture relaxed yet commanding. He was taller than she expected, but not intimidating. His face was sharp, with strong features and clear, intelligent eyes that seemed to look straight into the truth of a person. His hair, dark and neatly kept, framed a face that was calm, almost serene. He smiled slightly as he approached, and Lyara felt a strange warmth rise in her chest. "Princess Lyara," he said, his voice deep but not harsh. "Welcome to our colony. I hope your journey was comfortable." Lyara bowed politely, her nerves fluttering. "Thank you, Captain Kale." The journey was enlightening. She hesitated, unsure what to say next. She had imagined all sorts of conversations, but the reality made her tongue feel heavy. Kale seemed to notice her hesitation and offered a reassuring smile. "I know you have heard many stories about me," he said, stepping closer. I hope that what you see here is not as frightening as you imagined. Liara blinked. She had expected arrogance, a cold dismissal, or at least a commanding presence that would make her feel small. Instead, he was calm, gentle, and respectful. The rumors of a ruthless man seemed like echoes of something far less personal, something distorted by fear and misunderstanding. I admit I am curious, she said slowly. The stories were strong. Kale chuckled softly, a sound that was surprisingly comforting. Stories are always stronger than reality. I am a human, yes, and humans are complicated. But I have come here to understand, not to dominate. I want to know your people, your culture, and you, Princess Liara. Liara felt her heart beat faster. This was not the man she had imagined. His words carried no threat, only respect. And yet there was a quiet strength in him, a sense of purpose and intelligence that made it clear. He was not someone to be taken lightly. He was capable, but not cruel. As they walked through the colony, Kale began to show her the city. It was a marvel of human engineering with clean streets, tall buildings, and advanced technology. But unlike the stories she had heard, it did not feel cold or oppressive. The humans moved with purpose, but there was a sense of community, of order and care. It made her feel at ease. They stopped at a plaza where children were playing. Liara watched as Kale knelt down to greet a small human boy who had wandered too close. The boy looked at him with wide eyes, and Kale smiled, speaking in a gentle tone that made the child laugh. Liara felt a small smile appear on her own face. He is not ruthless with the innocent, she thought. Perhaps the stories were wrong. Kale noticed her watching and said, "Do you find humans strange, Princess?" Liara hesitated. "Yes, and fascinating. They are different from my people in many ways, but I see kindness as well." Kale nodded. "Humans can be harsh, yes, but we can also be very compassionate. Strength and kindness can exist together if one chooses to practice both." Liara was struck by the simplicity and honesty of his words. She had feared a man who would rule through fear, but here was someone who wielded strength with care. Her heart began to shift, the fear giving way to curiosity and admiration. Over the next few days, Kale and Liara spent time together in formal and informal settings. There were meetings with diplomats, tours of the colony's research centers, and even exercises in strategic planning. In each situation, Kale's abilities shone, but so did his humility. He listened carefully to Lyra's insights about her people, asking questions and valuing her opinions. One evening, they walked along a terrace overlooking the colony's gardens, glowing faintly under the twin moons. The air was calm, filled with the scent of alien flowers and the soft hum of technology. Liara felt herself relax in a way she had not expected. "Princess Kale," said softly, breaking the comfortable silence. "I want to understand what your people value most. What drives Zyphara to thrive?" Liara thought for a moment. "We value balance, knowledge, compassion, and respect for life. Our technology serves our people, not the other way around. We strive for harmony with the worlds around us." Kale nodded thoughtfully. "I admire that. It is rare to see civilizations that care as much about harmony as about progress. Humans. We often forget the first part." Liara looked at him, her curiosity growing. "And what about you, Captain Kale? What do humans value?" He smiled faintly. "Strength, survival, loyalty, but also hope. Humans dream, even when the odds are against them. That is how we endure." Their conversation continued long into the night, and Liara realized that every answer Kale gave shattered the myths she had built in her mind. He was not ruthless in the way stories described. He was disciplined, intelligent, and fiercely protective of those he cared about. The next day, diplomatic exercise tested their teamwork. A simulation of a potential conflict scenario required them to coordinate both human and Zypharon forces. Liara expected tension, imagining a clash of styles and philosophies. But Kale's approach was patient, listening to her strategy and integrating it with his own. They communicated seamlessly, their strengths complementing each other. By the end of the exercise, the outcome was better than either had expected. Liara felt a thrill of pride not just in the result, but in the discovery that she and Kale could work together, despite coming from different worlds. That evening, as they debriefed, Kale said quietly, "You have a remarkable mind, Princess Liara. I am impressed by your wisdom and your courage." Lyra's cheeks warmed. "And I am surprised by you. I feared a ruthless commander, and instead I see a man who listens, who respects, who cares." Kale smiled, a small, genuine expression. "Perhaps we all carry reputations that do not reflect the truth. The important thing is to give people a chance to show who they really are." Liara nodded slowly, feeling a shift inside her. The fear that had gripped her for months was still there, but it was accompanied by something new: trust. Curiosity had turned into admiration, and admiration into a quiet, tentative respect. She found herself wanting to know him better, not just as a political ally, but as a person. The following days continued in this rhythm exploration conversation. In moments of shared silence that spoke more than words, Liara began to notice the small things: the way Kale's eyes softened when he spoke to children, the quiet patience he showed to his team, the careful way he considered her opinions. She realized that the ruthless human she had feared was not a monster, but a man shaped by responsibility, guided by principle, and capable of compassion. One evening, as the twin moons of the human colony reflected in the water of a quiet canal, Liara asked, "Do you ever feel lonely, Captain Kale? With all this responsibility?" Kale's gaze drifted to the moons, and for a moment he seemed distant. "Yes," he admitted. "Leadership can be isolating. Decisions can weigh heavily, and the reputation one carries can make true connection difficult." Liara looked at him with understanding. "I feared you because of what I had heard, but now I see that you, too, face burdens. Perhaps it is not ruthlessness that defines you, but strength under pressure." Kale turned to her, meeting her gaze. "You are wise, Princess Liara, and kind. That is not always easy to find, especially in someone who has never met me before." The honesty in his voice struck her deeply. For the first time, she felt that the stories, the rumors, and the fear were irrelevant. What mattered was this moment, the truth of the man standing before her, and the connection that had begun to form between them. Liara realized that the journey she had feared, the meeting with the ruthless human, had already begun to transform her. Fear was giving way to understanding. Prejudice was replaced by curiosity. In its place, a quiet hope began to grow. By the end of their first week together, Liara understood something profound. The man she had feared was not an enemy, nor even an intimidating force. He was a partner, a potential ally in more ways than one. And for the first time in months, she felt excitement about the future instead of dread. As they stood together on the balcony overlooking the colony, Kale's hand resting lightly on the railing beside hers, Liara whispered softly, almost to herself, "Perhaps he is not what I feared, but exactly what I needed to meet." Kale glanced at her, a small smile tugging at his lips, and said quietly, "And perhaps you are exactly what I needed to understand my own world better." In that quiet moment under the twin moons in the calm night sky, the first threads of trust, admiration, and respect wove themselves between the princess and the human captain. And though the galaxy was vast and challenges lay ahead, Liara knew that the first step toward understanding, and perhaps something more, had been taken. The stories of fear and ruthlessness were no longer the only truths she carried. Now, there was another story forming, one of courage, empathy, and the possibility of connection across worlds. The morning sky over the human colony was clear. The twin suns of Zyafara reflected faintly on the colony's metal towers. Princess Liara stood on the observation deck, looking out at the fleet of ships docked nearby. The past weeks had been a whirlwind. Meetings, ceremonies, tours, and diplomatic exercises with Captain Kale. She had feared him, then admired him, and now she trusted him. But peace, as always, was fragile. A warning alarm sounded across the colony. Red lights flashed along the corridors, and automated messages warned of an incoming threat. Lyra's stomach tightened. This was no simulation. Sensors had detected an incursion from a neighboring systema fleet of unknown origin. Heading straight for the colonies, Kale appeared beside her, calm but alert. "Princess Liara, the situation requires immediate coordination," he said, gesturing toward the holographic map that displayed the approaching fleet. "We need to protect the colonies, and we need to do it quickly." Liara nodded, her fear momentarily replaced by determination. "Tell me what I can do." Kale studied her for a moment, then said, "Your knowledge of Zyfera's defense systems will be critical. Together, we can coordinate a strategy that protects both human and Zifran citizens." They rushed to the command center, a vast room filled with holographic displays and control panels. Officers from both human and Zifran fleets were already present, tense but prepared. Kale moved with authority, issuing calm commands, while Liara added insights about her planet's shields, planetary defenses, and strategic points that humans might overlook. For hours, they worked side by side. Liara coordinated Zifran defense grids, while Kale directed human fleets into optimal positions. Their collaboration was seamless. Liara noticed how Kale listened carefully, taking her suggestions seriously, and how he adjusted his strategies without ego. In turn, Kale's decisions were precise, informed, and protective of every life, not just the mission's success. As the enemy fleet approached, Liara felt her heartbeat quicken. The distant ships appeared like dark silhouettes against the starlit sky. Their weapons glinted ominously, and for a moment fear gripped her chest. But Kale's calm presence beside her steadied her. "Trust in what we've planned," he said quietly. "We can do this together." The battle began. Energy beams and missiles streaked across space as both fleets engaged the intruders. Liara monitored defense grids, rerouting power to critical shields, while Kale issued orders to human ships, coordinating attacks with precision. The chaos of battle was intense, but their unity was stronger. Liara realized something powerful. Despite coming from different worlds, she and Kale thought in ways that complemented each other. His tactical genius and her knowledge of Zifran systems created an advantage that neither could achieve alone. The fear she had once felt about him being ruthless, was gunny, was focused. Yes, but always for the protection of life. Never destruction for its own sake. Hours passed. The enemy fleet, though strong, was no match for their combined efforts. Liara and Kale's coordination disrupted the intruders' formations, forcing them to retreat. When the last enemy ship vanished into the void, the command center erupted in cautious relief. Kale turned to Liara, a tired but genuine smile on his face. "We did it. Together." Liara felt a rush of pride and gratitude. Yes. Together. She realized that this shared victory went beyond strategy, was proof that understanding, cooperation could triumph over fear and prejudice. After the battle, the colonies began recovery efforts. Liara and Kale walked through the affected zones, observing the damage and helping coordinate relief efforts. Citizens both human and Zifran thanked them, grateful not just for survival, but for leadership that cared about every life. During a quiet moment, Kale said, "Princess, I have faced many battles, but none as important as this one. Not for strategy, not for honor, but for the people we protect, and having you here guiding, advising, leading, it made all the difference." Lyra's chest warmed. She had never imagined a human could express such honesty, such gratitude, without pride or arrogance. She realized that her fear had been replaced entirely by admiration and trust in something deeper, a bond that went beyond politics or duty. "I could not have done it without you," she replied softly. "You are not what I feared. You are more." Kale looked at her, eyes reflecting the starlight above. "Perhaps that is the lesson in fear, Princess. Sometimes what we dread most is not the enemy, but the unknown. And when we face it, we discover truth." Over the following days, Liara and Kale continued to work together. They trained with joint forces, shared meals, and discussed plans for future cooperation between their worlds. Every conversation, every shared moment, further shattered the myths she had believed. She saw the human capacity for courage, compassion, and vision, the very traits that made him feared yet admirable. Then came the day of the official union ceremony, a formal event meant to symbolize the alliance between Zephyra and the human colonies. The palace was adorned with shimmering banners, flowers, and lights reflecting both human and Zephyran cultures. Delegates from across the galaxy attended, and the air buzzed with anticipation. Liara stood at the ceremonial platform, her heart calm but full of emotion. Kale approached her, not as a commander or political figure, but as someone she had come to trust and respect deeply. "You are ready," Kale said softly, his hand brushing hers lightly. "Not just for this ceremony, but for everything that comes after?" Liara nodded, a smile spreading across her face. "I am ready, and I am honored to stand beside you." The ceremony began, blending human and Zephyran traditions. Words of promise were exchanged, hands were joined, and the crowd witnessed the union not just of two leaders, but of two worlds. Liara and Kale's eyes met throughout, communicating what words could not trust: admiration. And the beginnings of something more profound after the ceremony. As guests celebrated, Liara and Kale stood on a balcony overlooking the city. The twin suns of Zephyra set in a cascade of gold and violet, reflecting on the calm waters below. "You were right," Liara said quietly, "about stories and reality. I feared you, but I see now that you are not only wise and strong, but kind. You care in ways I could never have imagined." Kale smiled gently. "And you were right to trust your instincts. You saw beyond reputation, beyond fear. That is a rare gift, Princess Liara." She laughed softly, feeling a lightness she had never known. Perhaps fear is not always a warning. Sometimes it is a guide to what we need to understand. Kale reached for her hand, holding it gently. An understanding is the first step toward true unity between people and between worlds. Liara squeezed his hand, the warmth of his presence grounding her. She realized that the journey she had feared, the meeting with the so-called ruthless human, had led to something extraordinary. Fear had transformed into trust, curiosity into admiration, and together, they had proven that cooperation and courage could overcome even the greatest challenges. That night, the colonies celebrated, and Liara and Kale walked among the citizens. Humans and Zephyrans laughed, danced, and shared stories. Liara observed the joy around her and realized that her people, too, had begun to see the humanity in the human captain she had once feared. In the quiet moments, Kale and Liara stood together, looking up at the stars. Liara felt a profound sense of hope. "There is still much to do," she said softly. "But together, we can face anything." Kale nodded, his hand brushing hers again. Together, he agreed. The galaxy was vast, full of uncertainty, and challenges still lay ahead. But Princess Liara no longer feared the unknown. She had met Captain Kale, understood him, and seen the strength of humanity not in fear or ruthlessness, but in courage, compassion, and unity. And so, under the twin moons and the glowing stars, a new story began, not one of fear, but of trust, understanding, and hope. A story where two worlds, once separated by suspicion, now stood together. Ready to face the future, the princess and the human captain had discovered that greatness was not measured by power or fear, but by the ability to understand, to care, and to lead with both strength and heart. The galaxy had witnessed their courage, and now the first true chapter of their shared journey was just beginning.